My name is Samantha Reynolds. I'm 42 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of how my family stole my adoption records, what I went through because of it, and what happened when I finally found the proof. I was 7 years old when my parents sat me down in the living room. It was a Sunday afternoon. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was the day everything changed. It was the day I learned I wasn't who I thought I was. My mother was smiling. My father was holding my hand. They were both looking at me with love in their eyes. They were both looking at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. "Samantha," my mother said, "we need to tell you something. Something we should have told you a long time ago. Something we've been waiting to tell you." I said, "What is it, Mom?" She said, "You're special. You're our miracle. We didn't give birth to you. We adopted you. We chose you. We picked you out of everyone in the world. You're our gift. You're our blessing." I was shocked. I was confused. I didn't understand. I didn't know what adoption meant. I didn't know what she was talking about. I said, "What do you mean? You're my parents. You raised me. You loved me. How can you not be my real parents?" My father said, "Samantha, we are your real parents. We raised you. We loved you. We gave you everything. We are your parents in every way that matters. But we didn't give birth to you. We adopted you when you were a baby. We chose you when you were just a few weeks old." My mother said, "We wanted you to know the truth. We didn't want to keep secrets from you. We wanted you to know how special you are. We wanted you to know how much we love you. We wanted you to know that we chose you." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to feel. I was just a child. I didn't understand. I said, "I don't understand. Where did I come from? Who are my real parents? Why did they give me up?" My mother said, "We don't know, sweetheart. The adoption was sealed. We don't have any information about your birth parents. We only know that they loved you and wanted you to have a better life. They wanted you to have everything." I was confused. I was hurt. I was angry. I was sad. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know what to think. I said, "Why didn't you tell me before? Why did you wait so long?" My father said, "We didn't know how. We didn't want to hurt you. We didn't think you were ready. But we think now you are. We think you can handle the truth." I ran to my room. I cried. I couldn't stop crying. I cried for hours. I cried until I had no tears left. I cried until I was empty. For 35 years, I searched for my biological parents. I looked everywhere. I asked everyone. I found nothing. It was like I had been erased from existence. It was like I never existed before them. It was like I was a ghost. It was like I was nothing. I went to adoption agencies. I went to hospitals. I went to courts. I went everywhere. I looked everywhere. I asked everyone. I talked to everyone. I hired private investigators. I hired lawyers. I hired everyone. I spent thousands of dollars. I spent thousands of hours. I spent everything. I spent my youth. I spent my money. I spent my sanity. I spent my life. I found nothing. There were no records. There were no documents. There was nothing. It was like I had never existed. It was like I was never born. It was like I was a figment of someone's imagination. It was like I was a dream. My parents said, "Samantha, maybe it's for the best. Maybe you're not meant to find them. Maybe you should stop searching. Maybe you should move on with your life. Maybe you should let go of the past." I said, "Mom, I can't stop. I need to know. I need to know where I came from. I need to know who I really am. I need to know the truth. I need to know everything." My mother said, "Samantha, you are who you are. You don't need to know where you came from. You just need to know who you are now. You need to let go of the past. You need to move forward." But I couldn't let go. I had to know the truth. I had to know who I really was. I had to know where I came from. I had to know everything. I had to know the truth. When I was 35, I started to suspect something. I started to suspect that my parents were lying to me. I started to suspect that I was never adopted. I started to suspect that the adoption was a cover-up. I started to suspect that everything was a lie. I noticed things. I noticed that my parents were always vague about my adoption. I noticed that they always changed the subject when I asked questions. I noticed that they never had any documents. I noticed that they were hiding something. I noticed that they were lying. I started to ask more questions. I said, "Mom, where are my adoption papers? Where are the documents? Where is the proof? Where is the evidence? Where is everything?" My mother said, "Samantha, I don't know. They were lost. They were destroyed. We don't have them. We never had them. We never had any documents." I said, "Mom, how can they be lost? How can they be destroyed? You must have some records. You must have something. You must have proof." My mother said, "Samantha, I don't have anything. I'm sorry. I wish I could help you, but I don't have anything. I never had anything." I said, "Mom, I don't believe you. I think you're hiding something. I think you're lying to me. I think you're keeping secrets from me." My mother said, "Samantha, you're being dramatic. You're always so dramatic. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to lie about. You just need to let this go. You just need to move on." But I couldn't let it go. I had to know the truth. I had to know everything. I started to investigate. I started to look for proof. I started to look for evidence. I started to look for answers. I started to look for the truth. I started to look for everything. I went to the adoption agencies. I went to the hospitals. I went to the courts. I went everywhere. I looked everywhere. I asked everyone. I talked to everyone. I found nothing. There were no records. There were no documents. There was nothing. It was like my existence had been erased. It was like I was never born. It was like I never existed. It was like I was nothing. But I didn't give up. I kept going. I kept searching. I kept believing. I kept hoping. I kept fighting. I kept pushing. I kept going. I talked to people. I talked to relatives. I talked to friends. I talked to anyone who might know something. I talked to anyone who might have seen something. I talked to anyone who might have heard something. I talked to everyone. One day I talked to my aunt. She was my mother's sister. She was the only one in the family who ever seemed to care about me. She was the only one who ever seemed to love me. She said, "Samantha, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Something I've been hiding for years. Something I've been keeping from you." I said, "Aunt, what is it? What do you need to tell me? What have you been hiding?" She said, "I don't think you were adopted. I think your parents took you. I think they stole you from someone. I think there's something very wrong with your adoption. I think everything is a lie." I was shocked. I was hurt. I was angry. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe my own family would do this to me. I couldn't believe my own aunt would keep this from me. I said, "Aunt, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What do you know?" She said, "I don't know the whole story, but I know your parents were desperate to have a child. I know they would do anything to get one. I know they would do anything to keep you. I know they would lie. I know they would steal." I was 42 years old when I got a letter from a lawyer. His name was Mr. Thompson. He was 75 years old. He was retired. He had been a lawyer for 50 years. He had seen everything. He knew everything. The letter said, "Dear Ms. Reynolds, I have been trying to reach you for many years. I have information about your birth and your adoption. I have been keeping a file for 35 years. I think it's time you knew the truth. I think it's time you knew everything. Please come to my office. I will explain everything. I will tell you everything. I will show you everything. Sincerely, Mr. Thompson." I was confused. I was curious. I was scared. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I would find. I didn't know if I was ready for the truth. I didn't know if I could handle it. I went to his office. He was sitting at his desk. He was old. He was tired. He was ready to tell the truth. He was ready to tell everything. He said, "Samantha, I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for 35 years. I wanted someone to know the truth. I wanted you to know the truth. I wanted you to know everything." He reached into his drawer. He pulled out a file. It was thick. It was full of papers. It was full of everything. It was full of the truth. It was full of everything I had been searching for. He said, "Samantha, I have a file on your parents. I have a file on everything they did. I've been keeping it for 35 years. I wanted someone to know the truth. I wanted you to know the truth. I wanted you to know everything." I opened the file. I started reading. I couldn't stop. I couldn't look away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The file was thick. It was full of papers. It was full of everything. It was full of the truth. It was full of the proof. It was full of the evidence. The first page was a summary, a single sheet of paper that listed everything. Everything they had done. Everything they had taken. Everything they had destroyed. Everything they had lied about. Summary of illegal adoption and kidnapping of Samantha Reynolds, 1988. I read the words. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't feel. Illegal adoption. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds did not legally adopt Samantha. They did not go through proper channels. They did not have legal custody. They took the child without permission. They stole her. They kidnapped her. They took her from her real family. Kidnapping. Samantha was taken from her biological parents. The biological parents were young. They were poor. They could not fight for their child. They could not afford a lawyer. They could not afford to get her back. They were destroyed. Financial coercion. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds paid the biological parents. They gave them money. They gave them everything. They told them they would never see their child again. They told them to forget about her. They told them to move on with their lives. They told them she was gone forever. Emotional destruction. The biological parents were devastated. They were broken. They never recovered. They never had another child. They spent their whole lives looking for her. They spent their whole lives hoping to find her. They spent their whole lives waiting for her. I turned the page. Behind the summary were the details. Page after page after page of evidence. Each one a knife in my heart. Each one a piece of my life. Each one a piece of the truth. August 20th, 1988. Samantha Reynolds was born. She was a healthy baby girl. She was beautiful. She was perfect. She was wanted. She was loved. August 22nd, 1988. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds approached the biological parents. They offered them money. They offered them everything. They said they would give Samantha a better life. They said she would have everything. They said she would be happy. August 25th, 1988. The biological parents signed the papers. They were young. They were poor. They were desperate. They thought they were doing what was best for their child. They were wrong. They were so wrong. August 27th, 1988. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds took Samantha. They took her home. They raised her as their own. They lied to her for 35 years. They told her she was adopted. They never told her the truth. They never told her anything. September 1st, 1988. The biological parents tried to get Samantha back. They went to the authorities. They went to the courts. They went everywhere. They were told they had no legal rights. They were told they signed away their rights. They were told to move on. They were told to forget. The biological parents never gave up hope. They searched for Samantha for 35 years. They never stopped looking. They never stopped hoping. They never stopped loving her. They never stopped waiting for her. I documented everything. I documented everything they did. I wanted someone to know the truth. I wanted Samantha to know the truth. I wanted her to know who she really is. I wanted her to know everything. I read the entire file. I cried. I couldn't stop crying. I cried for hours. I cried until I had no tears left. I cried until I was empty. I realized everything. My parents had never adopted me. They had stolen me. They had kidnapped me. They had taken me from my real family. They had lied to me for 35 years. They had destroyed my life. They had destroyed my real family. They had destroyed everything. I called Mr. Thompson. I said, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me what was happening? Why did you let me suffer all these years? Why did you let me search for nothing?" He said, "I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't think you were ready. I was afraid. I was afraid of your parents. I was afraid of what they would do. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I said, Mr. Thompson, thank you. Thank you for keeping the file. Thank you for telling me the truth. Thank you for giving me my life back. Thank you for giving me everything. He said, Samantha, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for the pain you suffered. I'm sorry for the years you lost. I'm sorry for everything. I said, it's okay. I understand. You were trying to protect me. I know that now. I forgive you. I forgive you for everything. I started to search for my real parents. I used the file. I used the records. I used everything. I used the truth. I used the proof. I used the evidence. I found them. They were old. They were broken. They were devastated. They had spent their whole lives looking for me. They had spent their whole lives hoping to find me. They had spent their whole lives waiting for me. I went to see them. They were living in a small apartment. They had nothing. They had spent everything trying to find me. They had spent their whole lives hoping. They had spent their whole lives waiting. My mother was crying. She said, Samantha, I knew you would find us. I knew you would come back. I knew you would find us. I never gave up hope. I always believed you would come. I always believed you would find us. My father said, Samantha, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we couldn't keep you. I'm sorry we couldn't protect you. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry we lost you. I'm sorry we couldn't save you. I said, Mom, Dad, I'm here now. I found you. I finally found you. I'm never going to leave you again. I'm going to be part of your life. I'm going to be your daughter. I'm going to be everything you wanted me to be. We hugged. We cried. We started to heal. We started to become a family. We started to love each other. We started to build something new. I went to my parents' house. I had the file in my hand. I had the proof. I had everything. I had the truth. I had the letter. I had the evidence. My mother was in the kitchen. She was cooking dinner. She didn't look up when I walked in. She said, Samantha, what are you doing here? You didn't call. You never call anymore. I said, Mom, we need to talk. I placed the file on the counter. I said, Mom, do you know what this is? She looked at it. She said, What is this? I said, This is a file from Mr. Thompson. It's a file on you. It's a file on everything you did to me. It's a file on all your lies. It's a file on your kidnapping. It's the truth. I started reading from the file. I read about the kidnapping. I read about the payment. I read about the lies. I read about everything. I read about the truth. My mother's face turned pale. She said, Samantha, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, Mom, I have proof. I have evidence. I have everything. You kidnapped me. You stole me from my real parents. You destroyed my real family. You lied to me for 35 years. You destroyed my life. My father came into the room. He said, Samantha, what's going on? What is this? I said, Dad, you kidnapped me. You stole me from my real parents. You destroyed my real family. You lied to me for 35 years. You destroyed my life. You destroyed everything. My father said, Samantha, I didn't know. I didn't know what she was doing. I thought we adopted you. I thought everything was legal. I didn't know she took you. I didn't know she stole you. I never spoke to my parents again. I never saw them again. I never wanted to. I moved on. I rebuilt my life. I found happiness. I found peace. I found my real family. I found everything. I am 42 years old now. I have a good life. I have a good job. I have good friends. I have everything I ever wanted. My parents are old. They are alone. They have nothing. They lost everything. They lost their daughter. They lost their family. They lost everything. If you've ever discovered a devastating truth about your own identity, I want you to hear something. You didn't deserve what happened to you. You didn't deserve to be used. You didn't deserve to be manipulated. You didn't deserve to be taken advantage of. You deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know who you really are. You deserve to be loved. My name is Samantha Reynolds. I'm 42 years old. I found out my adoption was fake. And I found my real family. If this story made you feel something, drop a comment below. Tell me the word that describes what you feel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for listening to mine. I started to build a new life with my real family. I started to build a new relationship with my real parents. I started to build a new future with them. We spent time together. We went on trips. We laughed. We cried. We became a family. We became everything we had ever wanted to be. My real mother was so happy. She said, "Samantha, I never thought I would see you again. I never thought I would hold you again. I never thought I would have you back." My real father was so happy. He said, "Samantha, I never thought I would find you. I never thought I would have you back. I never thought I would be your father again." I said, "Mom, Dad, I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be with you forever. I'm going to be your daughter forever." I started to heal. I started to let go. I started to move on. I started to forgive. I started to forget. I started to live. I went to therapy. I talked to someone. I worked through my pain. I worked through my anger. I worked through everything. I worked through my past. I learned to forgive. I learned to let go. I learned to move on. I learned to live. I learned to love. I learned to be happy. I found peace. I found happiness. I found love. I found everything. If you've ever discovered a devastating truth about your own identity, I want you to hear something. You didn't deserve what happened to you. You didn't deserve to be used. You didn't deserve to be manipulated. You didn't deserve to be taken advantage of. You deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know who you really are. You deserve to be loved. My name is Samantha Reynolds. I'm 42 years old. I found out my adoption was fake. And I found my real family. If this story made you feel something, drop a comment below. Tell me the word that describes what you feel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for listening to mine.